Okay, I get it. A 2-point seatbelt system or a lap belt, as shown here with Michaela and me driving in our Class A motorhome, doesn't seem to restrain us very well. But is a 3-point system with a shoulder strap really safer? I think you may be surprised at what I found when I started researching this. Some disturbing consequences that I never thought about. Please, you gotta understand, I am not an expert in the field of seatbelt safety. And that's why I'm always looking for people smarter than me and more informed than me to help me through certain situations. And this is one where I sincerely need some help. Okay, here's the issue. Michaela and I own an older Class A motorhome. It's a 1997 Beaver diesel pusher. It came equipped when we bought it, secondhand, with the original 2-point seatbelt system, which is just a lap belt. And several viewers have kindly offered concern that it may not be enough for us. And we agree. We're heading south in about a month. I promised these viewers that I was going to do something about it, as well as somebody else who expressed a concern about a year ago. And I said to that guy, you know what? It's a good thing to look at and we will do it. But I've yet to overcome some problems with it. It's not as cut and dry as I thought. When I looked at how we can best retrofit our Class A with a 3-point system with a shoulder strap, I found some disturbing potential consequences with that system, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks, and that's what I want to share with you today. Now again, I'm not an expert, but I suspect a Class A motorhome is probably the least safe of all types of recreational vehicles, because it's basically a box built on top of a chassis, a rigid frame. And while the rigid frame, the chassis, may be really strong, the box most certainly isn't. Now, some are much better than others. But when you look at accident video of how RVs can break apart, whether they're fifth wheels or trailers or even Class A motorhomes, you can see that they just break apart in many instances. Now, here's the problem. When I looked at installing a 3-point system with a shoulder strap, I opened up the wall to see if I could put a backing plate into the wall that would be strong enough to act as an anchor for that shoulder strap that we're missing. And I found no way of doing that. There's not enough room between the studs, and even if there was, there's not enough strength in that wall system to support an anchor point. The only way that I can see that anchor point being in any way meaningful is to put a through bolt through the whole side of the RV and putting a large backing plate on the outside. But that would look really awful, wouldn't it? Now please remember, I'm making a distinction here between an older Class A motorhome and where to put that anchor point, how to get it into the wall in a meaningful way, versus a Class C or a Class B or a truck pulling a trailer or a fifth wheel. They don't have the same issues because with their 3-point systems, there's no problem anchoring that third point into the structural part of the vehicle, just like in a car. And then you have airbags, typically you've got the whole restraint system there. But when you're trying to go into a wall that could potentially break apart, it's a whole different issue. And this is where I found some really disturbing information. I came across an article from 2008 by at the time, a race car driver, presumably, who stated this. And it's this information from a race car driver that really stopped me in my tracks, because I thought that's a very logical thing to think about. But when you think, if we adapt a 3-point seatbelt system into our motorhome, and even if I could get a backing plate into the wall and your motorhome sidewall breaks away in a crash, which it's likely to do, then your torso is being pulled with that wreckage. And that scared the hell out of me. And as you can see in that quote, this fellow's saying, give me a proper 4-point harness system or a lap belt. So it got me thinking, maybe we should just stick with the 2-point system. A lap belt, we might be safer. Well, then you might say, logically, if you're so worried about the sidewall of your Class A breaking away and taking you with it, why not go with a seat that has an integrated seatbelt system built right in? And many of the newer Class A's have that. And we looked into that very carefully. The downside is it's very expensive. And I'm not saying you don't do it because it's expensive, but there's a lot to it. Number one, in our case, we would have to rebuild the floor underneath our existing chairs because they wouldn't be adequate enough to support that kind of a chair system. And then you have to buy a new chair with the seat belts built in, and probably new. I tried looking for a used one. I couldn't locate one. Not to say they're not out there, but I just gave up. A new system, a new chair with the integrated seat belts in them, probably $3,000 to $3,500 each. So you're looking at $7,000, and if you had to rebuild the floor, I bet you're looking at probably $7,000 to $10,000 to make that change. And sure, your life's worth it. And that's definitely an option. I sure don't like the chances of our survival in any kind of a restraint system with a really severe accident in a Class A. I mean, you just don't want to go there. Whatever we choose to do, I know and you know that the best thing that we can all do is just not get into an accident. Avoid it, especially in a Class A motorhome. Be safe, drive sensibly, and be qualified. You know, I know some of you may be all over me on this, but I think there are a lot of people who are not really that qualified to be driving big rigs. Ours is not that big. It's a 30-foot Class A motorhome, but it's still 26,000 pounds. And when you're barreling down the highway with a tow car in tow, it's a lot of mass behind you. Now in British Columbia, where we live, there's a law that if you're towing or driving a vehicle over, I think it's 6,400 kilograms or 8,400 kilograms, I'll put the right amount up here. You have to take a test. You have to do a written test, and you have to be taken out on the road with an instructor, an inspector, and show them that you can park, that you can drive carefully. I took the test when we had a fifth wheel, and I had to show that I could back up, I could park it, you know, and all of that. And then you're granted a license to tow or drive a recreational vehicle. And in our province of British Columbia, if you want to drive a Class A with air brakes, you have to have a special air brake endorsement. In my case, I took a commercial air brake course, which required me to do a written exam, and then I had to do a practical exam, and now I'm entitled to drive any vehicle with air brakes. So those kinds of things can help make our roads safer. But I'm still an idiot. I still do stupid things, and let's just hope I never create a situation where we're in an accident with our Class A, but let's just all be safe. Okay, I'm getting off track again. Don't let me do that. Back to the issue of seatbelt safety. If you were in our situation, what would you do? I'd really like to know. And additionally, I'd like to know if you agree with the assessment of the race car driver, the quote that I showed you, as to what could happen with your torso being pulled in a Class A motorhome if the unit broke apart. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Oh God, it's really cold. really cool here. That's a wrap. Excuse me. Sorry. Hello, fellow travelers. The images doesn't show much. Airplane. Oh, Jesus. Riding in our motorhome. Bugs. Doesn't seem to restrain us very well. Doesn't seem to hold us very securely in place. By what I found out, I think you may find that, oh, Jesus, Murphy, son of a gun. Some disturbing consequences that I never thought about. Stay with me. Oh, Jesus, that was really pathetic.